But let's therefore turn to first our big budget face-off. Is this a feel-good budget, as some are calling it, or a missed opportunity? Can this be the budget that spurs investment? Is there really enough for the Aam Aadmi? What are the risk factors? Can India weather global headwinds in the next 12 months? Joining me now, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Congress MP, and Baijan Panda, National Vice President of the BJP and former MP, two of the most articulate voices that we have in Indian politics. Appreciate both of you joining us. Let's turn to the opposition for a moment, since they often claim they don't get enough of a voice. Dr. Tharoor, are you going to go along with what Udayan Mukherjee and a lot of analysts are saying today? This was a relatively credible, solid budget that has ensured an element of fiscal consolidation.
Look, I mean, you call it a Rahul Dravid budget, and I can see some of the merits in that, but it's also sometimes, in some ways, a hit or miss budget. So you can find your least favorite cricketer and put his name to it too, because the truth is that if you look at some of these issues, the first thing that occurred to me as I heard the budget was there was no mention of Manrega, and the slashing of Manrega to a record low of 60,000 crores. At a time when experts, just judging by demand, which is up since the pandemic, are saying that it needs 1.4 lakh crores. And last year, the finance minister had to come back to Parliament with supplementary demands for grants because the higher amount that she'd allocated didn't prove enough. It seems to me absolutely incomprehensible that they would then slash Manrega down to such a record low number. Similarly, very, very big concern about unemployment, which was not specifically addressed. The word, in fact, was not used. We have a 16-month high, as you know, in unemployment figures in India today. We're also facing record levels of youth unemployment. Nationally, it's at 16%. In some states, my own state of Kerala, it's at 40%. And there's some real worries about what we can do to absorb our young people. And then while there's talk of some tax relief, there's some confusion about what that tax relief really means, because most people were actually getting more than 7 lakhs to write off when they had the old tax regime system, because it was 5, but they had various other allocations, house rent allowance and insurance and so on and so forth, that they could take off. So it came to 7.7 lakhs, whereas right now they're only going to get 7 off under the new system. So there are some real questions about all this. And finally, the question is, while infrastructure expenditure is great, and it's good to see so much coming into railways and into highways and all of that, what's it coming at the expense of? And if you look at the budget carefully, they've slashed Manrega, as I've said. They've also slashed allocations to women and child development, the integrated child development scheme. The Ministry for Minorities is being slashed. The Ministry for Labour has been slashed. And our defense ministry has had a very marginal increase for capital outlay, which doesn't even match the rate of inflation. So the priorities of the government, what they've chosen to spend money on, is fairly clear, and no doubt they'll get applause for it. But the issues of what they haven't spent money on, allocated money on, still remains to be worried about.
Okay, so Jai Panda, net what Dr. Tharoor seems to be suggesting is that a number of those who have been distressed, particularly during the pandemic years and even today post-pandemic, their concerns haven't been adequately addressed. He mentioned Manrega, he mentioned the fact that the FM did not speak about the unorganized sector, unemployed, youth in particular. Respond to what you're hearing.
First of all, Rajdeep, I think it's unfair and stingy to call this budget only a solid budget, because it is rather spectacular. I mean, just look on the infrastructure front itself, 33% rise in allocation to 10 lakh crores, and it's not a one-off. In the last 3 years, from the pandemic affected lows, we've had 3.5 lakh crore for capex 3 years ago, 5.5 lakh crores 2 years ago, 7.5 lakh crores in this current year, and now in this budget, 10 lakh crores. And it's not as if that's not getting implemented. Every year, this money has been almost entirely implemented. And that is spectacular. This is one of the reasons that the world is looking to India, as the IMF calls it, as a shining light in the global economy. Now, it's also incorrect to say that it doesn't take care of sections of society, because every single section has been taken care of. Take, for example, 20 lakh crores credit guarantee scheme for agriculture. Take, for example, 157 new nursing schools. This budget has the highest ever allocation for health, health sector, highest ever allocation for the education sector. Now, Shashi, of course, has otherwise been gracious about some aspects of the budget. He does have a pet peeve about Manrega, and I want to point out to your viewers that Manrega is a demand-driven scheme. So whatever the demand is, it will be made up, as was made up last year, like he said. But the reality is that there's such massive investment going on that the same people who would have needed Manrega in a crisis are actually getting jobs from other ways. For example, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana has gone up to a massive 80,000 crores. Now, who's going to build these rural houses? The same people who would have otherwise needed to take help for Manrega. Now, the track record of this government under Prime Minister Modi, and first under the late Arun Jaitley and now under Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji, is phenomenal management of fiscal prudence. Now, you look at what has happened post-pandemic to even developed nations. Look at inflation in those nations. Look at the fiscal deficit in those nations, and how well India has managed this. And that's why India is getting all these plaudits. And it's not correct to say that there's no reference to jobs. How do jobs come about? Jobs come about through these investments and through these various schemes. And it is reflected in the jobs data that is out there.
Okay,
I just want to point out, Rajiv, just one thing, one thing. There 1 million jobs are being created every month for the last several months. This has been the holy grail for India. And 900,000 EPFO registrations are taking place every month. You can't just turn a blind eye to that.